In the 1870s, an unlikely villain arose in the eyes of moralists, the post office. You might think the post office was all about delivering packages and keeping people connected, but to some it represented danger, scandal, and even moral corruption. They believed letters could ruin women's virtue. At this time, letters were one of the few ways people could communicate over long distances. For men, it meant business, politics, and personal connections. But for women, it opened the door to something that some found terrifying: private, unsupervised conversations. For the first time, women could send and receive letters without anyone knowing the content. No fathers, brothers, or husbands would be able to control these communications. Moralists of the time saw this newfound freedom as a dangerous opportunity for clandestine correspondence with unprincipled men. There was fear that innocent young women would fall under the spell of smooth-talking scoundrels, and secret love affairs would destroy reputations. To prevent this, some called for restrictions on women's access to mail, fearing that unsupervised correspondence would lead them down a path of sin and ruin. A movement began to push for tighter regulations, some even suggesting that ladies' mail should be inspected before being delivered. This fear reflected a deep societal double standard. While men could write to whomever they pleased without judgment, women were expected to be constantly watched, lest they step out of line. Many of these attitudes came from the belief that women were naturally weaker and more easily influenced, especially by romantic or immoral suggestions. Allowing women to communicate freely with strangers, it was considered downright dangerous. But despite the outcry, women continued to use the mail system, and they did more than exchange love letters. They shared ideas, pursued education, and built social movements. The ability to write freely became a tool of empowerment, with women participating in political causes, literature, and social reforms through the mail. The suffrage movement and abolitionist efforts were strengthened by this invisible network of correspondence. Little by little, these dangerous letters helped reshape society. The panic over women using the postal service is a reminder of how every new form of communication, whether it's mail, the telephone, or the internet, has been met with fear at some point. Each time, those in power have worried that women gaining access would lead to chaos. But history shows us the opposite. Communication doesn't ruin people, it empowers them. And thanks to the dangerous letters of the 19th century, women learned that their voices could not be silenced by fear or moral panic. Communication is power. Communication. So the next time you send a text or email, remember that not so long ago, even letters were seen as revolutionary and dangerous tools of freedom. Because a letter is more than just ink on paper, it's a voice, a connection, and a spark for change. Subscribe for more historical stories.